Buongiorno a tutti, questo lo posso dire in italiano, visto che comunque siamo in Italia. Okay, so I'm having this lesson in English. It's more like because, well, I think that you can understand, since nobody here complained a lot about this, but also because it's going to be recorded. I think that you have seen that all the lessons here are recorded and then they go online and will be shared. What I think is that if you want to share something really, nowadays it of course has to be in English, because you can have an audience that could be wider. And for example, also my website is only in English. I could have make it in Italian, but I think it's a bit more a complication it's not really useful for anybody. So this is like a conceptual decision. Now let's make it in English. Also because many things you will see are visual things which don't have a specific language and are anyway international. So in this case, the real content is images, and that's not going to be in any language. In fact, what about this lesson that will be recorded, it will be online, and in this way it will live also in a different space, that space of the network, and in different times. In fact, after making this decision of speaking in English, I also made a small introduction to what I wanted to say, to speak about light, and I wanted to talk about media. In fact, I want to talk about media and light, because one of the latest things that I'm dealing with is understanding how media change our perception of reality, and how, for example, I know that they affect my work. So, and of course they affect also our everyday life, because we interact a lot with media and not just with the world without media. So in my first slide, I have found this very ancient allegory. It's from Plato. It is the allegory of the cave. In Italian is Il mito della caverna, for the Italians who maybe, most of us have studied it at school in philosophy. And this is, when I was studying what exactly media is, it came to my mind, this image. You can see here, let me see if I can move the mouse on this screen. Anyway, I say it. On the left, for who is not familiar with it, Plato talks about this when he talks about how we perceive reality, how we perceive the essence of things, and it has a specific purpose. That's not what we're going to talk to today. But for example, what we have in this image is that these people that are, let's say, since they were born chained behind this wall, and what they can only perceive is just these shadows. And these shadows are shadows of, so a shadow is not the real object, it is already a sort of media, a medium. And this shadow is also a shadow of some preparation made by the man with some clay, for example. And so we have vase, a horse, and a bird, and these are not the object. The real object is already a medium. So we have a projection of a medium, and so there is somewhere the real object, who is, of course, outside of this cave. And so this image, Plato uses this to say that, to go to see, reality is something very, very complex, and it's very far. You maybe see a media of reality and not things themselves. What I think about this is, one thing that I like is there is fire who is producing light. So in what we have here is a sort of artificial environment where you don't have sunlight. That's supposed to be the most important light in the world, but you have a completely artificial environment. But at the end, it looks to me very much as the media you have and you experience online. So you don't experience the real thing, or how we are used to, but you experience a media of it. This doesn't mean it's bad. It means there is some sort of transition between things. And for example, media, of course, are very useful because you can transfer them, you can memorize them, repeat them, and so on. And one important thing it made me think about this image and this concept is that when we see something, even if it's in reality, for example, I don't know, everything you can see around you, you are not in reality seeing the things, but you are seeing some photons who bounce on that device and go to your eye. So in this way, I consider light as a sort of super media, meaning that everything we experience visually is not just is not the thing itself, but is something that bounces on it. And for example, I have a video from Cecilia Brianza next, who will show you an example of how we live in our day life. There is a world, but people are interacting and seeing a mediated place. So they are not experiencing the life in the place, but through a media. Okay, sometimes you go back to reality. Okay, it was just I think to introduce you what I think about media and how we interact nowadays. One interesting thing about when media becomes media is that you can remix it in a non-traditional way. So if you just take a picture of something, it's the media of the thing, but if you take it in several times, you can compose it in a special way. This is a picture composition, a collage from Massimo Aken that has been here in some of the previous lessons at the beginning, I think. He plays with vision and so on, but we also have some other specific interesting pictures. So this is a picture of a picture. So Marco Cadioli is an Italian, artist who makes pictures of Google Earth. So he doesn't go in the real world to capture light of the physical space we see around us, but he goes on Google Earth and makes a screenshot, and then he produces images of images. So this is why an image becomes a little bit more complex, and so you see that my research and study of media is getting deep with this type of examples, and you can remix really several things. So for example, in his latest work of this year, he goes make a screenshot from the top, and then he goes down to see on Street View who is living there and so on. He makes this sort of remix of media. So one thing that we are used to know as a photograph of reality means capturing light in the space. In this case, a photograph is a photograph of another media. So this is like a sort of thing that can go forever, through forever. One of my work that I started in 2010 is called Empire, and is a bit a mix of a photo of the world, the normal world, how we say it, and a screenshot of other images from the online world of the media. It's called Empire because the empire is the media empire of Berlusconi and Mediaset, And what we have in this image is the screenshot of the tower that I make every 15 minutes. So since 2010, I have this sort of installation that goes on, where there is a computer who is making this for me every 15 minutes, make a picture of the real world of this tower, and a capture of some media that are presented of, for example, the TVs. What you have on top are the screenshot of TVs, and then there are the website on the bottom, and then other type of media, books and magazine. So every 50 minutes you have a screenshot of this media. And yeah, here is another example. And here you have what happens, for example, during the day from 5:45, 16:15, this is, and so on. So for example, you see that light in the real world changes, and also media changes. So in fact, what we see here is, we see also before with the work of Cadioli, that in fact the network is a sort of another space. So we have a space even, because you can go and take a picture and maybe move around. Maybe if you follow a link, you go, it's a sort of space. So one thing that can be interesting is to analyze this sort of new world, new space where you still have medias. And yeah, here, for example, Empire, you have a full day of images, what is generated in a specific day, how it's presented if you have a big poster. Okay, the last thing I want to talk to you about this media, light and media on this first part, is a work that I did in 2008 with a painter. She's called Leonil de Carabba. You will see her in the exhibition in San Carpoforo later this year. She's a painter. In this case, she made a lot of a painting of constellations, and she did in this painting. And what I did is to create a projection of light on her painting to analyze specific parts. So for example, in this case, I was projecting some green light in some part, and what you see is just the green parts. For example, if there is a red element in this part of the painting, you will see as black, because as I was telling you before, light is the one that's a super media. So if you don't put red, and red will never come out from this image. And so, for example, this is what I was projecting. So I was using the video projector as a light source. So we are so one device that is mainly intended to project images, I mean, that you can recognize as I don't know, a movie or something like that. I was using just a sort of light, a light that you can, is like if I was creating some gobos on a normal light, but of course it's digital. So in fact, this work was a video projection, but not with any visually traditional element. It was just croppings of different colors. For example, in this part, I was highlighting this blue, and the middle is white. So I was projecting this sort of thing in a dynamic way, so that you could see the painting. That's a traditional medium, but you could see it differently depending on what light was projected. So this is again to talk about light as very important element of our perception. Okay, in this picture we have how was the installation. It was a small gallery here in Milano, and here is the device. It is a video projector, and there was also a UV light that was synchronized, because this type of paintings are also responding differently with some pigments of UV light. And well, you will see also Carabba's work in San Carpoforo. You can appreciate it in reality. This is very interesting because she's already was using, let's say, full light and UV light, and also darkness, because in her painting there was also some pigments that are phosphorescent. So even when you turn on, if they are being charged by light, they can emit light again. So she already had the concept of a different type of lights on the painting. It can present himself in a different way. I enhanced this because I used a projector with also RGB light, let's say, and also it was dynamic. I'm not showing you the movie because it takes some time. Okay, this was my first introduction with some new concept that I'm studying in this period, is to analyze very deeply how media, what is called the ontology of media, I would say, in a philosophical way. In this part, in the next part instead, I will talk about what the real title of this work, that's called The Personality of Light, and I use this to highlight that different type of lights behave in different way. So a lot of my work is to study how light changes. For example, some first work are about natural light, then there is some artificial light, you will see. A key point that I like to show is this sentence from Jan Dibbets, who is a conceptual photographer who started working in the 70s. He says, a photograph does not reproduce an image, it records variations of light. So this is a very important point because you can use photography instead to capture images that you are interested in. You use it in a more aseptic way, like you just capture what happens, and then maybe it's the series of images that can have meaning. It's not just a single image, but the series, the change. So for example, this is a work made in 1970 by Jan Dibbets. In one day, the 21st of December, I think, he made the shortest day, in this case at Van Abben Museum, I think is in Amsterdam. Then his house in Amsterdam, so he's photographing outside the window of the museum, his house, Conrad Fischer Gallery in Düsseldorf, and then at Guggenheim Museum in New York. Of course, he was not in all these 4 places, so he designed the work, and then some other people, maybe the one in his home he made himself, but like every, I don't know, let's say 15 minutes, more or less, from the number of images he's making, he makes a picture, and so, for example, in the morning it's very dark, and the day is there is full light at midday, and then at the end it becomes dark again. So in this type of work, you see what is interesting is not the image, but is the transition of light. And this is I discovered this after I made some similar works, and I was sort of happy because it's not just me. And okay, another similar work is from the work on a gallery, so you can photograph the shadows that are moving. So still, if you look at the first image, you will see nothing, but then things change and so on. What makes sense then is the series. Okay, now let's come to my work, because you see, what you do with photography is it happens that what you photograph is the light you get back from a photographed image is a sort of proportional to reality. So it's not absolute. For example, if in a certain moment there are 100 looks or 1,000 looks or 10,000 looks, you don't have it from the photos you have. So you just have a proportion of this of these things, lights and shadows, more colorful or not. Instead, what I wanted to do is capture and reproduce light in an absolute way. So, for example, I designed a system to capture light in the day with a lux meter connected to a computer. Then, and there was also a camera that's a color sensor to capture the color of this light. So, for example, this was at the beginning in the morning in one side of my home, and here is the opposite side where I can capture from the opposite side the intensity still with the lux meter and the camera for color. Then I designed this lamp who was able to reproduce the intensity of the light that I recorded and the color also. There are mostly there are cold white LEDs, but then there are also warm white LEDs and also one blue LED. It was quickly made with an Arduino to control the lamp, And what I did to calibrate is create, you see the lamp is projecting again on the lux meter, and so in a sort of feedback I checked that what I recorded before I could reproduce it again. So in this way I calibrated the lamp. So in this way I created a device that could reproduce the light of that day minute by minute. Okay, I know it's this funny noise. Okay, there was this computer in the exhibition where people who could that were going there could select a specific moment of the day and see what the light looks like in that moment, or you could reproduce the whole day in normal speed or even in fast speed, like in a time lapse sort of. And the installation was more or less in this way. What is interesting here in this cube it looks like a base for a sculpture, but in fact there was no sculpture, so the light was the subject. The surface was covered with barium sulfate, who is a specific reflecting material. So in this case the spectator could go, in fact this is an interactive work where the spectator could select different lights but instantaneously. That's one thing you don't experience every day, so because every day light changes with its own rhythm, and even if you stay a whole day looking at just light, it's going to be different than be able to jump from 6 a.m. to noon to 6 p.m. Just clicking in a place. Here we have some images of what it could look like, but an image does not capture the full thing, the full light. And in different moments you could just see the color and maybe some parts of the intensity of some part of the day. And here was a spectator for this light. Yeah, and my work is called The Longest Day Replay. The Longest Day because instead of being made the shortest day like Dibbets, it was made in the longest day, is the 21st of June of 2009. And replay because you could replay it again instead as you wanted. Going back to some other artist who studied light in the different moments of the day, we cannot forget Monet, who was very obsessed by light, in fact, and his subjects are just a pretext. I mean, he doesn't, for example, he's painting these haystacks, he's not really painting the haystacks, he's just the mood that's in different moments of the day. For example, he makes light of this series, like even 50 paintings, for example, of different moods of light. One of the most famous works he did is on the Cathedral of Rouen, where in fact I know he lived in front of he rented an apartment in front of the cathedral, so he could paint different moments of the day. And what he was doing is that at a certain time of the day he was painting in one painting, then he was putting it away and take out the next one for the next time. So different moments of the day produce a different effect. So okay, so these are some of the slides of the images. Okay, in 2010 I started a work where with a lot of pictures, I worked on different subjects during the day. In this case, images, not pure light, as you've seen before. So in different moments of the day, I took maybe a picture every minute or so. And for example, this is of the sea. You see an image like this, and then later is like this, and then so. And what I did is that then I made a sort of collage where in each part of the picture there is a small part of each image in the same place of the picture. So what you see here, in the vertical axis, you see still space as in a normal image. But then you see that the image is interrupted, and then it comes another piece of image, who is the image that comes next in time. So in this way, basically what you see from left to right is time passing on the subject. Of course, the subject is also dynamic, so you don't see, there is no really important correlation between what you see in the different slices of the image. But for example, you see that light changes a bit from left, then there is where there is the sun who is reflecting in the camera, and then you have sort of more amber lighting, because that was when it was sunset. And then light becomes a bit more blue because when the sun already went down, and so it's still a bit different. Then I did it in another type of subject. This is the horizon on the sea, and you see it's on the left is dark because it's before sunrise, and on the right is still dark again because it's sunset. And you see what you see, this horizontal line in fact is not happening in space, but is happening in time, as I explained you before. And here, for example, one day sky is a sky of a specific day, so you have slices of clouds that happen in that piece. And one interesting effect is that you see the sun, who is still composed like in a sort of circle again, like it is in reality. Because if you slice if something moves in front of the camera, then you can recompose it again with its shape. This is an interesting effect that I understood doing this type of things. And here is shadows moving on the wall in a sunset period. So on the left you see a light who is more white, and on the right is more amber because it's a sunset period. And here I photographed an image that is in fact more static, not like the sea before, and you just see the effect of changing shadows on the subject. And here was what I photographed, one frame of the photograph. If you see here, I just took a small piece of it in a specific place. For example, when you see the green leaf, it gets some shadows at a certain point, and then it's highlighted again, and so on. Okay, if we go back to Monet, who is anyway a good reference. In fact, this is also an important painting because it's what gives the name to Impressionism. It's called Impression Soleil Levant, and it's from 1872, and it's a sunrise. And now I have some other works of sunrise. There will be also mine at the end, but I want to show you first one from Bill Viola on 2005. What he does, he makes a video of sunrise, but with the camera in manual mode, so that he has a good exposition of the frame when the sun is rising in the beginning. What happens is that while you go ahead, light will burn completely, will overexpose the subject. This is because the technical media, are not made to capture all the intensity of light. This is a bit why I had to produce my own device before for capturing the pure intensity, because if you use a photograph, it's going to be or black at the beginning or too white at the end, or sooner, more or less. Then okay, is it okay? This is going. This is. Let's see if I can go on further. Maybe yes, I can. Here I made a movie. It's sort of time-lapse movie, meaning that it's 1 frame per second of a sunrise that I have from view from my home. There is still the tower you have seen before, because I discovered that in that direction there is a good sunrise. I go fast here, and you see a sunrise that's happening. I leave it go a little bit by zone now. So. Okay, and this is more or less, you see the sun going on. And what I did, if before, in the pictures you saw before, I was taking a small piece of space also in the image. In the next work, I will just take 1 line of pixel. So, and for example, this is a sunrise, a full sunrise. So what you see exactly, let me see if I can put the mouse back in the screen. No, I don't know why. Let me see. No. I don't know. Anyway, I wanted to put the mouse back in the screen, but I cannot do it anymore. Anyway, so what you see is a sunrise happening in space, in time. So what you see from left to right is purely time because it's just one line of pixel. Instead here, before you had a little bit more space. In fact, this is from 2013, so it's some years later when I refined my technique to study light in this way. And here I did it for 6 days in a row, more or less in the same time. And these are different effects. The aspect ratio is a bit different because it's more an experimental thing. And you know what happened? The 4th day, and the 6th day, this is what I photographed. And it's not because I left the curtains closed. It's because there was foggy. So this is the effect of a sunrise with no visible sun. This is also, it's still a study of light as it happens during the day. So I think that this type of photographing techniques help you to understand a bit how light changes, and during the day, and then also help you understand that a photograph is not an image, also, but can be something different. Well, one other interesting sun that I had to report is the one from Olaf Eliasson in Tate Gallery. I was very lucky to see this exhibition. And this is a very simple work. It's not dynamic. It's basically he presents a lighting device with a mirror on top of the room, where then it becomes a circle. And then people were like staying there as it was the real sun, like they were lying down, but in fact it was artificial light. So this made me think a bit of how we are affected by sunlight, how we interact with the light of the sun. For example, even if it's artificial. So like people were like staying there like it was the real sun. Okay, then there is another work that it's from 2009, the work that your teacher said before, when she said that I worked the first time in Frankfurt. These are an image of some oil lamps that you can see in the Archaeological Museum of Frankfurt. And what I did for that exhibition, my work was a study of the light of a flame of an oil lamp. Because it was an archaeological museum, I was interested in seeing a sort of archaeological type of light. So the archaeology of light, especially of light generating devices. So because the oil lamp was the technology to produce light 2000 years ago. So this is supposed to be a Roman oil lamp. And in that event, when we had the exhibition, was inside a context of light and building, where there was a fair, a light fair of technology of light. And in 2009 was the first boom of LED lighting. So what I did is I wanted to create a sort of relationship between the light of a technology of an old light, oil, and a new light, LEDs. So I created a device with LEDs who was connected to the oil lamp. Now you will show you little by little. So what I have, it's and I wanted to project this light that was in a relationship between the flame and the LEDs out of the window of the building. Okay, and here you see a bit the setup, where you have a camera who is looking at the flame, a computer who is analyzing motion, and then is transferring motion to the LEDs. In this, I call this work light sympathy, because sympathy from a Greek terminology means to feel together and behave together. So in this installation, you have the personality of a flame, but the power of a LED lamp. Here there is a video that should explain you how things work.
girato dalla televisione tedesca.
Sì, è stato girato. Yeah, it's been. This video is from the Frankfurt Allgemeine, who's the newspaper of Frankfurt, and yeah, here we have the credits, and yeah, this is the installation of 2009 regarding the flame. Then I have another. Let me see why it didn't go. Okay. Okay, now I have another installation that's analyzing the flame. It was made here in Milano, still created by Gisela Gellini for the exhibition of last year in San Carpoforo. In this case, after 5 years, 4 or 5 years, I had new things in mind, new technologies, and what I was interested in is still to capture the motion of the flame, but then I wanted to present it in a very specific way. You've seen that I am a bit working on how things change in time. You've seen it from my previous works of photography. Here I wanted to present it in light again. So what I have is here what you have next to the flame of a candle is a small color sensor. A color sensor is a device that can read red, green, and blue of an object, of the light in this case. And then I have a lot of LEDs, around 1,000 LEDs, who create a long strip of about 17 meters in all the church. It was this line, and the thing works in this way. Here we have a video. It works in a way that the color sensor, like 60 times per second, reads the motion of the flame, and the color, it makes a picture of 1 pixel. Since it's just 1 pixel, and I have 1 pixel to display it, who is the LED, who is RGB. So I am making a lot of pictures very quickly of 1 pixel and reproducing it in 1 pixel again. So it's a more abstract in this way. And what you see in space, you see what happens in time. So, and then the motion makes it go away, so it's always real time. So what happens when you move the flame, you see maybe here. It's very difficult to film light anyway. What you say when there is a motion gets put ahead. But the title of this work is 1,000 Memories of Light, because in each moment you have 1,000 images of 1 pixel of the flame. You see here, when you light it up, it goes before it's dark, and then it goes this way, and then here is more or less was the effect. But you had a scrolling, 1,000 images scrolling away from the flame. Yeah. Okay. Here you get it. Yeah, of course, these are addressable LEDs, so they are like pixels. A pixel, you can decide at a certain moment what they are, what color they are. Okay. Now I want to talk about another. I like to when I study things for myself. Of course, I go back and study what others did in time and what's the relationship between different type of arts. For example, I use a lot of photography. This is really the archaeology of photography, and Edward. He was called Edward, but I discovered that he changed his name in Edward. So it was like a funny name for himself. Muybridge, who studies a lady who's going down the stairs. Why did I choose this subject specifically? Because we have another very famous, look at this, is 1884, and in 1912 we have Duchamp, who makes Nous descendons les escaliers. So here is a new form of art, photography, that's ahead, that changes the traditional type of art. This is very interesting because you see, even new technology change also the previous ones, and basically they are the same subject. One is made with photography, but you see, there are like 30 years. This is 30 years later than the image. So I think that photography changed a bit, even the traditional art. let's say, painting. And yeah, one interesting thing is that this is in the realm of cubism. Cubism means you show different dimensions, for example, different space dimension here on the same space. You see the canvas is two-dimensional. In fact, it's two-dimensional plus color, because of course each point has a color, so two-dimensional in space, but we have also a color space, so you have in fact the image. And in fact, all my works before you've seen are sort of cubism, because one dimension, you see it in transformation in dimensions. And from that time, also Giacomo Balla, you can find this in Milano, at Museo del Novecento. So what he does is his son, his daughter, who is running on the balcony. So you see the different elements. Or, for example, there is the dynamism of a dog. We see all the different elements all together. And I recently discovered also there were some photographers, who is Anton Giulio Bragaglia, who made this image of several shots on the same image to show motion. Futurism is very interested in motion, so in how things move, especially if they move fast. The technique you have seen before on the sun, I've also applied to some other type of subjects to try to study, to obtain different effects. For example, this is some flowers that I filmed like in normal motion, so like 25 frames per second. But that's not very interesting video. But what it comes out is that if you just take one line of pixel from each frame and you put it from left to right, you have this this type of image where what you see is the motion of the plants. I was very fascinated about this elastic motion of flowers and how they move. So I did this this type of work to see exactly how they move and if they can generate something interesting. And I'm applying this also to some other type of subject. For example, this is the sky. What you see here is very interesting. I think you would, I don't ask you because you would say, you would answer right. You will say these are clouds, are normal clouds. In fact, these are not clouds in the space, these are clouds in time. It means that these clouds are composed still with the same technique as before. And what you have here is a video here that moves, and these are the real clouds in space. The one you see on the left are 3 examples. If you cut the frame of the movie at the pixel number 10, pixel number 600, or pixel number 1000 of this image, you generate those 3 images. So they all look like they were normal clouds. In fact, they are clouds in time instead of. So it means that there are some subjects which you can switch time and space and they look the same. This is quite an interesting discovery for me. And I will use this discovery in the opposite way in the works I will present next. That is, if something that moves in time, it looks like moving in space, what happens if I make something that is static in space, I move in time? What will happen? I don't know if you got it, but I will show you later. In fact, what I will talk about now is some examples of color. Color is one of dimension of that we can capture from reality, from media. You know, these are 3 paintings from Phil Sims that were exposed in Villa Panza. Phil Sims is a painter who makes mostly monochrome paintings. Of course, they are monochrome from a certain distance. If you go very, very close, you see there is a brush stroke, maybe you see differences, but I don't think is a random choice, red, green, and blue, because these are how our eye works. Our eye has red, green, and blue detectors. So even our monitor then has a red, green, and blue part of the pixel to recreate reality. So I don't think it was the case. And here you see a very similar image. It's still from Jan Dibbets. It was a recent work, but from pictures he made in the 70s. So he took his pictures from the 70s that were like very small samples of cars, and he reprinted them very, very big, enlarging them. So at the end, you still have one similar effect, but what is interesting for me here is that he used an image. But the image is not recognizable as an image. It's recognizable as a pure color. It's a sort of monochrome painting. But you know, these are monochrome paintings, but then I analyzed one painting that said, is this truly monochrome? Well, we would say it is red, but I see white parts, I see black parts, I see a lot of reds. So this is a type of monochrome, but it's very, very much reds, a lot of reds in this image. And what he did also, Dibbet, he's tweaked the picture, who was red in the beginning, and he also made it yellow, because you know, when the media is digital, you can say, oh, let's transform this dimension a little bit, and it becomes, I mean, if you use Photoshop, maybe you are very familiar with this type of transformation. Okay, now, still on color, I go very quickly because this is a work I still have to finish, but in some years I'm presenting it anyway. So let's see if somebody can tell me what is this? What is a photograph? What is this photographing? It's written, you can understand, you can read it. I don't know if maybe it's too low, but you understand what is it exactly? But how?
I think 1 line of pixel each single.
Yeah, but from the film or not the film? Why?
Actually, because it's the name of it.
Yeah. I tell you because we got here. Instead of having the camera towards the screen where I would capture an image, I capture the wall who was opposite of the movie. So it's the light of the movie. So what is happening here is that even something as a movie who is in fact made for the images, you generally watch a movie because there are images, there is a story and everything. What I did is I didn't care about the images of the movie. I cared about the light that the movie was producing. So I captured the opposite wall. And this is what you get. For example, in 2001, An Odyssey in Space, maybe if you are familiar with the movie, you see that at the beginning there is the dawn with this orange part. Then there is a sort of, towards the end, this red part where the computer becomes mad and breaks everything. And so you could anyway have a mood of the movie. For example, here we have another movie, Blade Runner. You see completely different effect, different atmosphere of the movie. And then Traffic, who is a movie that it has very characteristic because it's shot with two different type of color. You see these browns and cold color like blue and so on. Plus one of my first experiments of a black and white movie, Modern Times, it's all grays and so on. But then I should hide what's below this one, but you can, if you read it, you will understand exactly what is it. So it's a football game. Instead of being a normal movie, it's a football game, and you see just green and the white and the blue shirts of made by when you make the close-up of the players. Italy, Germany, 3-1. I remember having seen it. Okay, we are heading towards the end and towards my latest works. What I'm interested in here again, Monet, the same subject from 1897 and 25 years later. What you see is that if you didn't know what was the subject, maybe you wouldn't understand. So what happened also in Monet, maybe because he was not seeing anymore very well, but this is what some people say, but he went more from an image to pure light. And what I'm doing with the work I will present here is a sort of dynamic light that is coming from a static image. Now I'll show you. I think you've seen this around this year because it's a sort of background of several logos here. And maybe I turn on my device and then you would see why it's how it's gonna look like when it's on the real work, because here it's just an image. So what you see here in the background, it's the path that this light is producing. So what I created is a display. I made this display with some LEDs and a controller made with a small Arduino. And what I'm creating is a dynamic light who has a specific mood, a specific so the source of this light is not random, but it's not even static. So you see it changes from yellow to blues. And how does it changes it? Where does this light come from? Where is this coming from? Well, here you see the path of this light. So there's a sort of walk that this light makes, and it comes from this. So what I've done is an algorithm that uses this image as a source, and then when it moves around, it in a sort of virtual lens, it goes and analyzes small pieces of this fish, and then it becomes light from this device. So for example, this is the path of light. You cannot see exactly the fish. Here, of course, you cannot see the fish, but you see little by little that light changes. Of course, here there are a lot of lights around, so it's a bit maybe alterated, but no, but it's so what I've done here is a bit the opposite of what I was doing before. So I took a static image, I walk in the image, and then I make a dynamic light. In all my previous work, I did the opposite. So I had a dynamic light, the light of the day, the flame, and then it became an image. Here, from an image, it becomes dynamic light. So when I told you before that looking at the clouds, I started saying, can we move? Can we do the opposite process? And this is the opposite process. Okay, then you can see it also closer to see how it's built and so on. And I did also, I did this series of several animals to study the colors of animal that become light. For example, the next one is from a leopard skin. And here you have, of course, light is, let me see if it starts here. Okay, what you have here on the back playing on the screen is the light from a leopard. Okay. Well, I announced this type of work in another situation. I was in Tallinn in September, and this is one of the most famous painting they have in Tallinn. Is a Danse Macabre, so it's a skeleton going together with, in this case, the most important people, who is like the Pope, the King, and so on. And I, in the city, I created an installation where this sort of work was projected very big on a building. And there was then this dynamic light who was, let me see if it goes on here. Yeah, you see it. This is much slower than before. So what you have here is this dynamic light who was changing in the city, taking a light of a painting of 15th century. So what happens is that I see it in this way. There was a light in 15th century. The painter recorded this light in his painting. So, and he was recording the subject he see in that time. There was a lot of green things, trees, animals. Plus there was the red part of how these rich people dress. So there was a light that the painter saw, seen in that time. That painter became a medium, that's the canvas, or no, it was not a canvas, but it was a board. And I took a photograph of this. In fact, I didn't even take it because they gave it to me, the picture of this. So another type of light bounced on this board, went on a camera. And then what I did is this, with my projection, I took this light back to reality again. So I say that this light is the light of the 15th century because it was recorded by a painting and I'm reproducing it. So in fact, this work is called flashback because it means a light from, you're getting a flashback, it means a sort of light from the 15th century back in the days of today. So I hope you understood this work. Okay, because it was the last one. Okay.